Okay, thanks everybody. My name is Ray Lindenberg. I'm a senior planner at the City of Oak Harbor. I'm going to start this meeting today. However, the first thing that we're going to do on the agenda is to select a chair and vice chair of the Oak Harbor Historic Preservation Commission. So with that introduction, I am going to allow you all to discuss that topic, and then the chair can either choose to take over the administration of this meeting, or I will continue on and we can discuss that process and how you do that in the future as well. So if you three would like to discuss right now who you would like to try and select as the chair and vice chair of the commission, feel free to go ahead and do so at this time.
We talked with Sarah about it, and we might just table it for the next meeting, if that's possible.
I think we can do that. Yeah, we're not making any decisions today, so I don't think that that's an issue. If we want to do further training and stuff like that, we can certainly do that. So I will continue forward. Did you have, yeah?
Can you explain the responsibilities of the chair and co-chair?
We can do that. Sarah, you said you had a slide. Okay, so the information that we have up here comes from our, can you put that on the full screen? Thanks. Comes from the, what's the title of it? The bylaws, thank you, for the commission. And so you can find that information there. We can get you this copies of all that as well. But essentially, when we get that back up, the chairperson is the one who kind of runs the meetings and asks for the roll call at the beginning. And then the vice chair is the person who takes over in case the chairperson isn't here. So that's a very basic level. There we go. So the four tasks of the chairperson: number one, to run the meeting; number two, to be a spokesperson for the commission; number three, to ask for volunteers or may appoint people to lead subcommittees and perform other duties as assigned by the commission. And essentially, the key thing really is to run the meeting. Subcommittees and things will come through discussion if there is any need for that, and the choices that you make as far as that's concerned. And then perform other duties as assigned. That's always the catch-all at the end. And for the vice chair is run the meeting in the absence of the chairperson, perform duties of the chairperson in their absence, and perform other duties as assigned by the commission. So pretty straightforward there. We can continue forward with me doing the kind of introductions here if you still want to go through this this training session by the DAP person, and then we can decide on that next time. We are also going to talk about a meeting schedule after the training. So those are our three items for today. So if you want to, we'll get in touch with Michelle and have her start the training, unless you have any questions for me right now.
I have an initial question.
Yeah.
On the sheet, it does show 7 positions. Is the goal to have 7 people overall?
I think the goal is to have 5, because we had 7 positions in the previous iteration of the commission, and it was hard to keep that fully staffed, and we had to have 4 people every time. If we have 5, then we only need 3 people. It's an easier threshold to cross. So I think we're going to stick with 5 and probably strike those and the ex officio as well from that list. We can jump to the third item. Yeah. while we wait for Michelle, let's go ahead and talk about the meeting schedule. Sarah has that also on a slide here in just a second. But essentially what we're looking at is that fourth Thursday of the month for the odd numbered months, with the exception of November. The fourth Thursday is, of course, Thanksgiving. So we'll move it up to the second Thursday of that month. And so we'll have the calendar set for 2024 looking like this. Today, January 25th, and then March 28th, going through the summertime and into November there. So what that will allow for, we tried to do it monthly with the previous iteration. It required a lot more coordination and, trying to keep people involved and all that. I think that every other month will suffice for what the amount of work we have for the commission. If we do need to do more, you can call for a special meeting. If you need to do like a series of inclusions to the registry itself, we can do that. But I don't sense that that's going to be too much of an issue. So if you all are okay with the 6 times a year in this particular format, I think we'll move forward with that. Does anybody see any immediate issues with those dates?
Did you say second or third one in November?
Second.
That is the third one written.
What's that?
So
Fix the date, yeah.
it'll be the 14th then.
Okay. And we'll keep, what we'll plan on doing in the future is getting a more detailed agenda to you via email or whatever, you've chosen to get it. And it will have essentially a list of topics that we'll have, and then also a brief staff report if necessary regarding the topic that we're discussing, and any information that might be included with that, plans, photos, etc., all that sort of thing. So if we have your email address, we'll be able to just relay it to you that way. That will be easiest rather than doing paper and everything. So I think Michelle's here. So we'll go ahead and step back to B and have her take over and tell us what this is all about. Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm Ray Lindenberg. I'm the senior planner. I don't know if you can see me because I'm over here.
I can see your hand. Nice to meet your hand, Ray.
Good to meet you. So I think what we're looking for today is just kind of the basic outline of what it is that the program is all about. If you have like a certain amount of time that you had considered here. We have an hour on our agenda, but we're certainly not asking you to speak that entire time or anything.
I won't speak that entire time. Don't worry. Yeah, I've got a little PowerPoint that I do for communities on kind of 101 for the CLG, and then you can ask questions. So
okay.
Just let me know when you're ready for me to start.
We are ready for you. Go ahead and start anytime.
You are? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, great. Perfect. I'm going to share my screen. So let me see if I can I share a screen on here? Yeah, we can. There we go. Entire screen. Okay. And can you all see that?
We can see it.
Okay, good, perfect. Okay, so hi everybody, my name is Michelle Thompson. I am the Certified Local Government Coordinator, and I'm also the Main Street Preservation Specialist for the Main Street program for Washington State. I work for the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a minute. And I'm actually the only person in my agency that works from the east side of the state. So I'm actually working right outside of Spokane in a little town called Cheney, and there's a picture of it there. And Cheney is also a certified local government. So what the heck is a DAP, where I work, Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation? It's a small state agency, though we're growing. We used to be a micro agency. Now we're getting bigger all the time. We have archaeologists, the state anthropologist is there, and then my unit, which is the built environment unit, and then we deal specifically with the built environment, so historic buildings above ground, and my background in education is all in historic preservation. So what does it mean to be a CLG, a certified local government? I get asked this a lot. I wish that it wasn't actually called certified local government because it's kind of confusing. It doesn't really give you any indication of what that means, CLG. It simply means that your Historic Preservation Commission is one that's certified by the National Park Service. So it's an accreditation, and there are 60 certified local governments in the state of Washington. And the National Park Service accredits CLGs because the National Park Service actually runs the historic preservation program at the federal level. So a lot of times you'll see things related to historic preservation that have the National Park Service logo on it. That's why. So what does a CLG do? So there's kind of 6 basic things that you do. This isn't everything, but the basics are you promote preservation, you educate your citizens about its benefits, you survey what's historic in your town. You can actually hire consultants with CLG grant money to actually do a survey and inventory and see what buildings in Oak Harbor are eligible for the National Register, your local register. You add to, this has the word Pullman on it. You add to the local Oak Harbor Register. So you add things to your local register of historic places, the Oak Harbor Register. You do review of changes to buildings listed on the Oak Harbor Register. You review something called special tax valuation applications, and you also review nominations for the National Register of Historic Places, and I'll get into that just a little bit more. And any of this stuff, I know this is a lot of information, and some of you probably know more than others, and some of you may be just kind of starting out on the commission. That, if any of this stuff is confusing to you, I'll have my contact information at the end of the presentation, and please feel free to email me or call me anytime you're confused or have questions about what you're supposed to do. That's what I'm here for. So I'm really good at responding, and there's no question that's a bad question. So kind of a rule of thumb, a building must be listed on a register to receive financial incentives. So again, it's why it's really good to get your buildings listed on like either the national, state, or your local register. And there are 3 registers. I just mentioned that. There's the National Register of Historic Places, there's the Washington State Heritage Register, and then there's your local Oak Harbor Register. The only register that actually requires review of changes to a building is the local Oak Harbor Register. The National Register and the State Register are actually just honorary. And so the local register, if you're trying to actually protect a building by having a commission lay eyes on changes to that building, you really want it to be listed to your local register. Local registers may or may not require owner consent. You want to consult your ordinance to see what your ordinance has to say. And if you haven't read your ordinance before, I cannot encourage you enough to do so. Of course, you don't have to memorize it, but that really is your go-to document, and that's what gives the commission powers, and it's also what gives you your limitations. So it's just a really good fundamental document that you really want to have a very good understanding of. You can have a historic district. You can have a national, a state, or a local historic district. They're a way to add a bunch of related buildings to a register at once. So building in a district is either called contributing or non-contributing. And contributing buildings are entitled to all the benefits as a building that's individually listed on a register. Contributing just means that it has all its historic elements to the building. Historic districts are usually created by a vote. That is true with National Register districts. Those are always created by vote. You probably have something in your ordinance that lays out, or you should have something in your ordinance that lays out the process for having a local register district in Oak Harbor. But again, consult your ordinance or ask me if you've got questions. Every year, CLG grants come out. So every year, my agency gets money from the National Park Service, from the federal government, for preservation purposes in the state of Washington. We get money every year, and by federal law, we have to give 10% of the money that we give to UCLGs. So there's 60 CLGs in the state of Washington, and you can all apply for this pot of money that comes up every year. It usually ends up being about $125,000 for the entire grant, and that's growing every year. We expect it to keep growing. That grant cycle just opened up a few days ago. So if you're interested in applying for a certified local government grant, it's totally your right, and you are entitled to apply for one of those grants. You're more likely to get it than not. It's a fairly simple process to apply for the grant. You can use it to survey your historic buildings in Oak Harbor to see what's eligible for a register. And again, once you get something that's eligible for a register, you get it listed on a register, the building could receive financial incentives. You can use it for education materials. CLGs have done walking tours, calendars, brochures, all kinds of cool stuff. You can do it. You can do trainings with it. You can go to conferences with it. There's a big conference that happens every year in our state called Revitalize WA, that's put on by the Main Street program. You can actually apply to send some of your commission members to the Revitalize WA training. You can add stuff to the national or local register. You can have a consultant, hire a consultant to do a nomination to the national register, the local register. You can create a historic district, a preservation plan, tons of stuff that you can do with these CLG grants. And if you're kind of thinking about, you might want to apply for a grant this year or another year, just get in touch with me, even if you just want to have kind of like a spitballing session and we come up with some ideas for a CLG grant for you. Just let me know and I can help you work on what you might want to apply for. But again, sorry, my cats are fighting. Those grants open in January and they close in April. So I mentioned already, you really want to know your historic preservation ordinance. This is your ordinance here. I just kind of took a screenshot. Chapter 18.50, your historic preservation ordinance. Really get to know it. Again, you don't have to memorize it, but it's fairly short and sweet. Some of it is a little bit confusing. And again, if you've got questions about it or parts of it seem really confusing or you don't understand something, please always feel free to call me and I can kind of walk you through it. You have the Oak Harbor Register of Historic Places, and so there's actually criteria for determining which buildings are eligible for your local register. That's the stuff on the local register, remember, is what you actually review for changes. So to be on your local register, the building has to have something called integrity. We'll talk about that more in a second. It has to be at least 50 years old, and then it has to fall into a couple of categories that you have in your ordinance. So here are some of your categories for being listed on the Oak Harbor Register. It can be associated with events. It can have distinctive architectural characteristics. It can be the outstanding work of a designer, builder, or architect. It can have an association with people in Oak Harbor, or maybe that were significant in the state. So again, this stuff is all contained in your ordinance. Just check out your ordinance for your criteria for listing on your local register. And I said just a minute ago that a resource has to have something called integrity to be listed on your local register. So we have these things called the 7 aspects of integrity, and I'm going to send you some follow-up material with more information on this and a couple of other things that I talk about. But just kind of be aware that in general, there's integrity of design, materials, workmanship, location, setting, feeling, and association. Again, I'm going to send you some information on this, and I'm just kind of doing a 101 right now, just kind of an overview, so I'm not going to dig too deep in the weeds with this, but just be aware that these exist. Integrity and condition are 2 different things. So a condition of the building matters much less than the building actually having some of its integrity. Integrity just means that it's got some of its original parts, or it's got its original location. The building hasn't been moved. So, you see this gray house and it's got all the, it looks in really good condition, but it's got vinyl siding and it's got vinyl windows and a vinyl porch, and it's in really good shape, but it's lost kind of its original character. But then that brick building is in kind of rough shape. It's starting to kind of fall apart, but it's got its original brick and windows. And so that's kind of what you're looking for. That's kind of more important when we're talking about integrity. Design review, this is taken from your ordinance, the review. So this is when you review changes to buildings listed on the Oak Harbor Register. The review shall apply to all features of the property, interior and exterior, that contribute to its designation and are listed on the nomination form. So you really want to make sure that you have a good nomination form to add stuff to the Oak Harbor Register, and then you kind of want to list all of the stuff on your nomination form that that make it eligible for the register. So you want to list the criteria, you know, that it falls under for being listed on the local register. You know, if it's related to a specific person, an event, if it's, you know, a good example of maybe a craftsman home, you want to list all of that, why it's eligible for the register, so that down the line you can review changes and keep it eligible for the register. The goal when you have things added to any historic register is making sure that changes don't happen to it to a point where it's no longer eligible for your register. So I said it all begins with a thorough nomination form. If you, I haven't looked at your nomination form, but if you want some examples of some really good ones, I can send them to you. Actually, I will send, I'll send one to you. I'll send you an example from Spokane. And I should say that Spokane, if you're ever looking for an example of how another CLG does something, you know, on their website or some of their forms, I would always look to Spokane. The woman that runs the preservation program for Spokane was actually in my job for 15 years. So she's got really great documents and all the kind of really good templates for everything. So if you're ever looking for anything to kind of just to steal from for your CLG, really look to Spokane. That's always a really good idea. So when you do a design review, when you review the commission reviews changes to buildings listed on the Oak Harbor Register and your local register, your ordinance says the information required by the commission to review the proposed changes is established in rules. What that means is that you've got some criteria for reviewing the changes to buildings listed on your historic register, and those should be actually found in your bylaws. It says rules, but they're probably contained in your bylaws. So basically, when you sit down and you review changes to a locally listed building, you just want to follow a certain set of design standards so that you can make sure that you're being fair, that you're being neutral, right? That you're being careful about setting precedent, and that you're treating all applicants that come up for design review the same way. And what those probably are in your bylaws, you will probably find something that references what's called the Secretary of the Interior Standards. These are just 10 practical guidelines. They emphasize repair over replace. These are put out by the National Park Service. And again, I'm going to send you a copy of the Secretary of the Interior Standards so you have these. So when you're doing a review of changes to buildings listed on the Oak Harbor Register, this is what you use to make, you know, just to ensure that you're being fair. So I kind of mentioned this earlier, being in a register, especially the National Register of Historic Places, the National Register of Historic Places is an honorary designation only. It can't do anything to protect a building automatically. It can't stop a building from being demolished. It can't protect the building from changes. What it can do is offer financial incentives. So if you have something in town and you're concerned about, you know, getting financial help for the building, something you think might be threatened with a tear down, you know, really important building, you would want to consider adding that to the National Register of Historic Places, because that can open up some funding. Again, it can't prevent demolition or changes, but it could open up some funding, some federal funding. So it's always good to have those buildings listed. And again, you can hire a consultant with that CLG grant money that comes along every year, and have a consultant come in and evaluate your buildings to see what's eligible for a historic register, and then, you know, even kind of point you in the direction of some funding that's available and get these things listed on a register. So, you know, it's all a process to, you know, to determine what's eligible, the process of listing something on a register. All of that stuff can be done with a professional consultant using that certified local government grant money. Just a couple things. I'm not going to go into these into detail. I just want you to have it in your head that they exist. There's something called federal historic tax credits. These are for income producing buildings that are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. So again, you know, if you've got maybe an old warehouse building or something that you think, you know, maybe there's a potential buyer for, or you'd like to see, you know, somebody maybe come in and turn it into a restaurant or a hotel, you know, these kind of big ticket items where somebody wants to do kind of a historic reuse of a building. What you really want to do is consider getting that building added to the National Register of Historic Places and then look into these federal historic tax credits. And then you would contact me, and then I would put you in contact with the person here at my agency who specializes in the federal historic tax credit. So he would actually walk you through it. But just know that these are available. There's something called special tax valuation, and this is actually for buildings listed on your local register. So anything that's on the Oak Harbor Register of Historic Places, and this is for residential and income producing, so it can be commercial or residential. And this can lower the taxes on the property taxes for 10 to 24 years. So again, this is something I'm not going to go into great detail about this. It's a lot of math and it's kind of confusing. I just want you to know that special valuation is something that you can offer to people that are listed on your local register. So this special valuation is like a carrot to incentivize people to list stuff on the local register, on the Oak Harbor Register. Lots of other grants out there too. They come up all the time, but again, rule of thumb is you want to be listed on either the local, state, or national register to apply for them. So that way, you know, when a grant does come up, you don't have to then scramble to get it added to a register, which can be a lengthy process, and then apply for the funding. You've already got it on a register. I was just on a phone call with somebody a few minutes ago that has a historic mill, and they're wanting to do some historic reuse of the building, and we found out that it's been listed on the National Register since 1978, which is awesome for them because they don't have to go through that process. They can just now apply for grants and tax credits and all of that stuff. So things come up all the time. If you are interested in funding for a building, you're not sure, you know, somebody comes to you about a building, go ahead and contact me and I'll tell you, you know, what there is available at the time. And I'm also happy to always talk with building owners or potential building owners about some of the incentives for historic preservation. This book is something I would love for you all to have as a commission. I mean, if you want to get your own copy, they're not very expensive. It's called A Field Guide to American Houses, and it was written by Virginia and Lee McAllister. This is a really great just kind of identification of historic houses. It's got lots of photos and kind of like the different elements of historic buildings. It's laid out chronologically. And it's got the kind of stuff that you see in like an actual town. It's not just, you know, really high style, fancy examples of architecture, but when you're kind of trying to learn the lingo and how to talk about and identify historic architecture, this book is wonderful. Again, I'll send you the link to this. And then there's also something called the preservation briefs, and these are put out by the National Park Service. And so when you're doing a review of changes to something listed on the local register, and you're following those Secretary of the Interior standards I was telling you about earlier, those 10 standards, you know, those are really overarching. They're very kind of loose. They're meant to be applied to lots of different situations. But the preservation briefs get really kind of in the weeds. They talk about, you know, historic masonry, leaded glass, what to do about graffiti on historic buildings. You know, really, they're topics kind of for everything. So again, I'll send you a link to the preservation briefs, but these are great to at least just bookmark and have on hand when you kind of run into a situation, or even just to give advice to people in your community that come to you with questions about kind of how to treat a historic building. The preservation briefs are wonderful. Another thing I'll send you a link to, I just finished the Washington State CLG handbook. So that's got kind of all the information you need about the program, about the grants. There's an index so you can kind of look up stuff, but I'll send you the link to the new CLG program handbook so that you have it. And I am doing a webinar on Friday, February 16th at 3 p.m. And I'm going to do it on the design review process. So I'm going to talk more in depth about those Secretary of the Interior standards and what we do when we are looking at changes to a locally listed building, and how we really do the review and using those Secretary of the Interior standards. So tune in for that. I will send you all a link if you want to show up. And then if you're not able to make it, I post this stuff. We have a YouTube page, which I will send you all a link to. And you can watch it later on too. But if you want to join us in person, it's Friday, February 16th. And there is my contact information. My information is also on the DAP website. Again, call me, email me any questions you have. That's kind of what I do all day long. I'm really an information booth for people on historic preservation. Any questions you have, if I can't answer them, I will get you to somebody that can. So that is it. And I'm going to end the slideshow, and I'm back. All right, I know that was a lot of information. Do any of you all have questions?
Hey, Michelle, this is Nick.
Yeah. Hi, Nick.
First off, Revitalize Washington, is that what's now
Yeah.
called Places?
It's now called Places. Yeah, I meant to say that. Yeah, we just changed the name to Places.
I was trying to Google on my phone, got confused.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot to say that. That name change just
And
happened.
they actually hosted it in Vancouver last year.
Yes, and it's going to be in Walla Walla this year.
Interesting.
And it's a preservation conference. So it's actually the Main Street program is actually a program of my agency. We just contracted out to the Washington Trust. And so Revitalize WA has traditionally been seen as kind of a conference for the Main Street program, but it really is a conference that the certified local government people should be coming to as well. And I'm trying to ramp up the amount of preservation content at the conference and kind of involving my coworkers with that. I'm on the planning committee now. And like I said, you can use funding from the CLG grant to send people to the conference. And several people did that last year.
More follow-ups, just to clarify things.
Yeah.
10% of the budget goes to CLGs, and
Yeah.
then there's also other grants also, right? That's what it was.
Yeah, there's we've got, let me think, just a few off the top of my head. We have a historic courthouse grant, theaters, barns and cemeteries. And then there are just a ton of other ones. There's something just came out today. The ones that I just mentioned, the barns, courthouse, cemeteries, those are Washington State grants. Those are appropriated by the legislature. There's something called the Paul Brune grant that just came out from the National Park Service, or it's just about to come out. That has been coming out the past few years, and that's a fairly big ticket grant. It was a couple $100,000 for each community that got it. So a few years ago, my agency, DAP, we actually applied for the grant to the National Park Service, and we were the ones that held the grant. And then we gave it out to, I think, 15 different communities in Washington State. But we're not, DAP, my agency is not applying for the grant this year, but you could, as a CLG, the city could apply for it if they wanted to. So if you've got something in your community that, really needs a new roof or, foundation stabilization, kind of big ticket item, the Bloom grant is actually something that you might want to look into. And on that note too, if you want to send me I have a listserv and I send out this information about the grants and just kind of preservation heads up stuff all the time. If you send me your email address, I can add you to that list so you know when this stuff is coming up. I think Ray's on it, but.
The last general question, so you said that the CLGs recently started or are about to. When does that period end for requesting?
In April. Let me see what day in April. I think it's April 28th.
I've got a follow-up question for that too. Is that so the grant window closes on April whatever date? That means if we submit a grant request for anything before that date, we're not we're not at the bottom of the list, right? Because I'm thinking if we discuss at our next meeting, which isn't until March, what we might want to apply for, that we're not going to be behind others.
Not at all. Not at all. And let me reassure you too, that's not how this grant works. I mean, I try to make it as simple as possible. It's a fairly easy grant to apply for. It's kind of, tell us what you want and how much you think it's going to cost. And again, because these grants are intended only for CLGs, we want to try to give you the money if we can. There's no punishment because you didn't get the grant in before April. That has nothing to do with you getting the grant.
Okay.
And like I said, let me know if you want to go over some ideas, or if you come up with some stuff at the next meeting and want to just send me an email and run it by me, please do.
Okay, that sounds good. I think one of the things, as you went through your presentation, I did notice that our ordinance does require consent of the property owner. And that was something that we did kind of with the city council, as they wanted to make sure it wasn't a situation where people were being kind of forced into something that they didn't
Right.
necessarily want. So that I did want to clarify. The historic district, I do not recall the process for. I'm not sure if we even put it in there. So I will double check that.
Yeah, and if you ever think that you want to do a historic district, it's just a matter of updating that language in your ordinance to say how it's done. You know, is it a majority vote, like a simple majority vote, or just how it's done, just so everything's above board. So later on, you know, if somebody in a district says, you know, well, I didn't know about this, and what was your process for this, or whatever, you can say, look, here, it's in our ordinance.
Sure, yeah. Okay. Did you all have any other questions or comments?
For the CLG, do we need to provide matching funds, or is it
No,
total? Okay.
nope. That's one of the reasons a grant can be really great. And last year, we gave out between, like, I think the smallest grant was like 2,000 and the biggest was like 20,000. And then we've got lists of I can send you a list of consultants that you can contact that have done similar work in the past for kind of any of your needs. So just, you know, remember there's money out there and there are consultants to help. So
Okay. I think that's great. Yeah, if you can send along any of those resources that you have,
I will.
I think consultants for doing some sort of survey would be amazing too, because that kind of
I'd
jumped
love to
out at
see
me.
that.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
okay,
Sure. Of course. Yep. I will send you a list of consultants too. Yep.
great. I think
Yep.
that's probably all we have. We really appreciate your time and helping us out here, and I'm sure we'll be in touch again for future reference. But
Thank you for having me and great questions. I really appreciate it.
yeah, thank you. You have a good day.
You too. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so what I was going to suggest is that for the next meeting, kind of building an agenda here, is everybody kind of think about those grants and what potential, you know, things we should target. If there's not a situation where we're going to be behind a whole other list of places that filled out their applications already, kind of thing. I was thinking, you know, having that. Some sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Potential sites looked at would be awesome, and then maybe getting some training for members of the commission so that we're all, you know, kind of up to speed with stuff. So if you have any ideas for that, for grants, you know, she mentioned the barns and the movie theaters, which we don't have any of, except for, I guess, the roller barn. Yeah, there's the roller barn. That's true. It is a barn. Yeah. So we can look into that and see if there's grants that we want to approach for that. So let's keep that in mind for the next agenda, and then we'll go ahead and hold off on the selection of the chair and vice chair until that next meeting. We'll put that first on the agenda though, so we can turn that over to a chairperson at that time. And then. Let's see, next meeting. Next meeting, I will plan on having kind of process and a review of our ordinance specifically. I wanted to get you in with the kind of 101 level stuff first, and we'll move into a little bit more specific Oak Harbor level stuff. And then priorities that you all might want to see as far as what we want to do in the next year or so. So if you have any ideas as far as, you know, ideas for projects, educational opportunities, providing education to the community, all those sorts of things. Let's have a discussion about that next time. So, yeah.
Do we have anything established already from the last commission?
We have, okay, so we do have a registry, a historic registry of the city of Oak Harbor. There is one structure on it, the Neal Tower. And so that makes it easier for you. You don't have to worry about anybody making changes, and you have to review them next month. If somebody comes in and says they want to be on the registry, we will make sure to get the training materials to you before then, but I don't anticipate that'll happen, and I will encourage, if anybody wants to get their property on the registry, to hold off until that meeting in June. Is that June? No, May. So that you have training for that.
Do we actively solicit for folks to put,
You can. That's not something that.
or is it normally just
is-
they come to us?
Generally, and that's the thing about it. This is your commission. If you want to, be more of an activist kind of thing, by all means, we can do that. It's not a requirement. It's not, we don't go out and look at properties and say we want that to be on the registry. That was the whole thing, like I said, as far as the city council wanted to make sure that this was a voluntary thing, that people weren't being kind of roped in and told, you can't do anything now, which is not the case, but there is kind of that misconception that once you're on the registry, you can't do anything with your property. Not true. But it does introduce a little bit extra, kind of red tape, if you will. So if that is something that you want to do as a priority, is go out and look at properties and say, hey, would you be interested in doing this? That is, by all means, go for it. That might get some of the interest going. And, one of the things that we talked about in the past and did a little bit of, but getting a booth out at, Holland Happening and stuff like that, so that you have that kind of education and that visibility to the community to say, hey, we're out here with these are some of the things that we do. We can do that as well, and we can look forward to doing that and talk about that the next time too.
What I'm thinking, of course, is during Main Street's normal course of business, we're always talking to building owners.
Yeah,
So, as soon as you tell a building owner there might be money available, they start going all, woozy.
yeah.
So I'm just wondering, since we do that anyway, we gather building owners, why not talk to them about, the CLG and making their building a historic building?
For sure. Those facade grants could be a big deal for people, for sure. Yeah.
I'm under the impression that in the past committee, they had a real hard time just getting any interest from buildings. Was that true, or is it just getting the word out? Or like a lot of people saying no?
It's
Which
kind of
one?
a combination. I think that we had some very involved people on that first iteration of the commission. That being said, it's kind of hard, when you have jobs and lives of your own, to get out and really, be an activist in that way. So I think that it was kind of a passive kind of attempt that, we have this available, come to us. And maybe that works fine and maybe it doesn't. We do have a Facebook page and we do have the social media and stuff like that I don't think that we fully harnessed last time around. So maybe that's something that we can take a look at too, and you can include in your priority list of ideas, and then we can coordinate here with our public information officer and go through that process too.
And just in general, when they talked about the various grants available and ideas for grants, sure, my first thought was definitely if someone comes and finds a survey of what is, according to them, very suitable buildings, it's a lot easier to then target those people or ask them questions and let them know about it versus kind of just figuring it out on our own. As not an expert, I don't know how much you two know about buildings in the city and all that, but and also maybe, hanging out in Walla Walla in October.
Yeah, and maybe that's the thing though, is as far as a priority list, is maybe we focus on what we know already. Pioneer Way, or specific like Smith Park or whatever it is, the roller barn, et cetera. Focus on those for 2024, and then look at, if we go get training and additional resources and stuff, then we can talk about getting, a survey done, and then kind of focus a little bit more on that for the next year. Like I said, priority list would be amazing. If you all want to kind of share ideas for that for next time, I'll put it as an agenda item, and then we can discuss and see if we come up with a good list of priorities. Okay. Is there anything else, any questions that you all had? I'm sure there are, but like I said, next time around, I'll have a presentation on specific Oak Harbor process and what it is you'll do, that was like I said, a very high level kind of basic introduction, and that's what we wanted. We'll save that production for anybody that we add to the commission so that they can get that basic introduction as well. But like I said, I'll give you a better idea of specifics next time around. And if you need to get in touch with me, I'm always available via email or phone, and or stop by my office anytime. So, all right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you know anybody, let them know. Yeah, that we are still looking for additional members to the commission. So if you have a friend lives in Oak Harbor, who's interested in, history or just improving the community, we have openings. So, yeah. All right. I guess that's it then. I will close the meeting since I am the chair today. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.
You did a great job.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ray. And Sarah.